Resident Evil has been a long favorite series of mine. It's one of my favorite game franchises since its inception in 1996 on the PlayStation 1. And with the release of Requiem around the corner, I think now is probably the perfect time to discuss why this game will be a pivotal entry in the series. And the success of the game and the franchise moving forward really hinges on one thing. It's not graphics, it's not story or gameplay. Its success relies on one simple question. Is it actually scary? Is it a horror game that satisfies the fans? Now, in this video, I'm going to be breaking down why the horror aspect of Resident Evil Requiem is essential to whether it becomes a franchise-defining masterpiece or just another divisive entry in the series. Now, everyone familiar with the RE franchise knows about its tumultuous past releases. The backlash of Resident Evil 5 and 6 being action-focused games essentially put the series on hold for years. I think it was something like 5 years. And it wasn't until the horror-focused RE7 in 2017 that Capcom was brought back into the good graces of its fans. Unfortunately, Capcom still wasn't sold on the success of 7, proving the fans wanted horror, and this led to the divisive entry that was RE8. You see, the first half of Village focused on horror, from being chased by Lady Dimitrescu in the mansion to being chased by a terrifying baby fetus thing in the second part of the game. The scares and thrills were jam-packed in the game. But by the time you venture into the third area, however, you started to amass huge cache of weapons, and the game turns into more of a bullet-spongy bosses and dumping dozens of rounds, high-powered rounds, into robot zombies. And while I do think the game was good overall, it was seriously lacking. Even though it was a commercial success, wasn't that big of a critical success with the fans. It had middling scores in the 80s, which is a huge disappointment for a Resident Evil franchise. So RE8 was accepted as a good game, regardless of the second half not being focused on horror, but those feelings may not continue if they push harder into the action. I look at between Resident Evil 5 and 6. Resident Evil 5 was met with some critical success and some commercial success, but the harder they pushed into action in Resident Evil 6, it speaks for itself. I think everybody's seen the reviews. I think it's probably everyone's least favorite Resident Evil game, at least in the mainline series of all time. Now, they've already promised that RE9 is going to be a horror game, but I'm not sure this means exactly what we would take it as at face value. See, RE4 was regarded as one of the best games in the franchise, and that's where they started to venture into a more action-focused game, and in my opinion, it may have been too far into the action. Now, is RE4 the bar for what qualifies for a horror game now, or is it RE2 or RE7? You see, Capcom tends to lean into what sells naturally, and it's influenced by the success of other franchises. So they may not be giving us the horror that we want in Requiem. I think I speak for most of the fan base when I say Resident Evil is at its best when it's scary, not when it's trying to be an action movie. And I don't think that's nostalgia talking. I think horror fundamentally makes for better Resident Evil games. And here's why. When Resident Evil leans into horror, every single moment carries tension. You don't know if you have enough ammo, you don't know what's around the corner, and sometimes you don't, even if you do know exactly what's coming, you still don't want to deal with it. In an action-focused RE game, that tension disappears. Resource management defines the series. Survival horror Resident Evil is about decision-making. Do I use this herb now? Do I save it? Do I fight this enemy? Do I try to slip past and risk getting hit? That's the heart of Resident Evil. Once ammo becomes unlimited and enemies become disposable, the survival part disappears, and so does the identity of the series. It can make for some fun playthroughs when you're doing multiple playthroughs, a second or third time, the hunk mode. There's space for that as well, but it shouldn't be a part of the main game. And enemies are scarier when you don't want to fight them. Some of the most iconic Resident Evil enemies aren't scary because they're strong. They're scary because they're inconvenient. Enemies like Mr. X, Jack Baker, Crimson Heads, these enemies don't exist to be killed on sight. They exist to drain your resources, disrupt your plans, stress you out. When enemies turn into XP pinatas, they stop being horror elements and start being obstacles you clear without thinking. The vulnerability created by the enemies in the Resident Evil games is what creates immersion for them. Horror-focused Resident Evil makes you feel vulnerable. You're not a superhero, you're surviving by the skin of your teeth. That vulnerability pulls you into the world. You move slower, you listen more, you respect the environment. Action-heavy Resident Evil turns the player into an unstoppable force, and once that happens, the fear is gone. You're no longer surviving, you're dominating. That tension, the enemies, the layout, the environment. This is what sets the pacing, and the pacing matters. Horror Resident Evil understands pacing, quiet hallways, long stretches of silence, moments where nothing happens, and that's the point. Action-driven entries keep the intensity cranked up non-stop, and ironically, that makes everything feel flatter. If everything is loud, nothing is scary. You need the silence to make the loud part scary. Now, the best RE games in the franchise proves the scary horror elements are what makes these games work. It's what makes them critical successes. Look at the entries people consistently praise the most. The RE1, RE1 Remake, RE2, RE2 Remake, RE7. They all prioritize horror first, with action supporting it, not replacing horror. That balance is where Resident Evil shines. Now, I'm not saying that Resident Evil should never have action. Action has always been a part of the series, and I love that about it. I love survival horror games where you actually get to fight back. That's an important part of it for me. Resident Evil is at its best when action is a tool for survival, not a power fantasy. Because when you're excited to pull the trigger, the fear is already gone. Now, while RE9, what I've seen of it from the releases, it looks like it's a beautiful game. It looks like it's going to be, at least parts of it are going to be made for the core audience of people who want horror games. But after seeing some of the Leon gameplay, I'm a little worried that they're going to push too hard into the action again. And one of the reasons they stated as for this is that basically they don't want Leon, people want to see Leon as a strong character. He's been around in the franchise so long, people don't want to see Leon being weak and timid. And I completely disagree with that. I think that's exactly what people want from the series. And if you can't achieve that with an existing character without pissing off your fans, then it may be time to just introduce new characters and move the story on in another direction. Resident Evil is a horror game. It's not an action game. And I think we've seen this many times where an audience's love of a character gets in the way of the story, where they don't want to kill off characters. I think of shows like The Walking Dead, where it was a huge success, an absolutely great, phenomenal show in the beginning, but then people started to become fans of the show. They had a huge following, and then all of a sudden they don't want to kill character mainstays off of the show. And it loses all of its suspense. It loses what made it matter. There are no stakes. The stakes become low. Nothing left. Now, I'm really hoping this isn't where we're headed with the future of Resident Evil, because I think Requiem actually can be the next RE6. They've already set it up with RE8 being the newer RE5, heavy action focused, and I pray that they've learned their lesson. But based on what I've seen from the gameplay footage with Leon, I don't think they have. I don't want Resident Evil to become Walking Dead. I think they should really move on to exploring different character stories, maybe from different perspectives. You know, there's always the possibility of going back and revisiting other characters that needed to escape Raccoon City. Hell, I'd love to see a new Outbreak. The internet capabilities are there now. The multiplayer capabilities are there. Give us a new Outbreak. Give us new characters. Give us people that will let you stay in the confines of being a horror survival game. That's what the fans want. And if that's not the route that they're headed down, we're in trouble as RE fans. We may hit another lull of 5 to 7 years without another mainline Resident Evil game, if this one falls in suit with. But anyways, that's all I got to say about Resident Evil Requiem right now. Hopefully they don't disappoint us. Let me know down in the comments if you think they're going to lean further into the action, or if they're going to make another critically and commercially successful horror game. Either way, I appreciate you sticking around this long. And if you like video games, you like video game content, you like Resident Evil, you like survival horror, you like anything gaming, please consider hitting that subscribe button. I really appreciate you hanging around. Thanks for watching and have a good day.